You know what? I did one of these, and I'm gonna take a different tact. All right, on this episode, it's the first new one in a while. 363 Baseball Talk. I remember the title of my little show right here. I mean, it's gotten some views, a little bit. Yeah. So I'm gonna do a little episode. I've been really busy working on a novel, working on a little writing project, and haven't had time to write much about baseball. Haven't had much time to talk about baseball. But today, man, get up Saturday afternoon, man. See this article, about saying Yankees should sign Manny Machado and Bryce Harper because it's possible. It's possible, so why not do it? And I really gotta say, I hit my limit, man, with Yankee fans. And I am a Yankee fan myself, as you can see. But I hit my limit with it, man. Like, I can't stand the expectations anymore, unrealistic expectations for what this team can do, as if they're operating without a budget when they always had a budget. And it's so easy to romanticize, the dynastic teams, which were a product of an excellent farm system and cheap talent. Derek Jeter was cheap before he signed his 10-year, $184 million contract. And Bernie Williams was cheap before he signed his huge contract after the 98 World Series. I mean, you're talking about 2 World Series where Bernie Williams is arbitration, man. And Jeter got his contract, I believe. I think it was after. I think it was after A-Rod got his deal, I believe. But he got a massive. Jeter and Todd Helton signed those contracts at around the same time. But anyway, all you hear is like, that the Steinbrenner brothers, Hank and Hal, and Hal's the more public face. You hear this from so many people that they don't have the commitment to win that their father did. While their father made so many horrific moves when he was trying to play GM, especially in the 80s before his suspension. And not to speak ill of the departed. There's plenty of things you can look up about Steinbrenner. George Steinbrenner, complicated human being, like anybody. Everyone knows, the acts of charity and kindness in Tampa Bay, and then the same guy would just, try to make Don Zimmer's life miserable for some reason on a ridiculously successful baseball team. Let's just have a random feud with Don Zimmer and make him leave as a bench coach for some reason. But it's easy to romanticize that time period and not look at it realistically. But the Yankees have always operated with a budget. That's what I think people don't understand. Because the team was so fucking good and so well built and developed and cultivated through the work of Gene Michael and Brian Cashman and Brian Sabian before he went to the Giants. He was working for the Yankees, and Buck Showalter as the field manager when those teams were developing, and the decisions being made and the advanced ways they were both Brian Butterfield, on and on and on, Gary Dembo, on and on. They had like a dream team of coaches. They had a dream team of a front office. And, when they would then subsequently, reload and sign a Jason Giambi or trade for an Alex Rodriguez, that's when people would be like, baseball needs a salary cap. It's not fair, because you had this team with a lot of existing talent that had been re-signed at pretty reasonable rates, where at the time Jeter's contract was huge and Bernie's contract was huge at the time, and people at the time thought Bernie had been overpaid because the analysis of players was more simplistic, and people thought a slugging corner outfielder like a Juan Gonzalez or an Albert Bell, who put up some eye-popping stats without a doubt. But they would argue that those guys who broke down due to injury were more valuable long-term than Bernie, because Bernie wasn't really a 30-home run hitter. Bernie just did everything well except throw while he was in his prime. But the point I'm making here is that those teams didn't win because they spent a lot of money. They won because they were intelligent and spent a lot of money. They definitely spent a lot of money. I mean, look at the pitching staff. You trade for Roger Clemens, you sign Mike Mussina, signed David Wells in 2002, and fuck over the Diamondbacks handshake agreement because you offered $2 more million or whatever. I mean, all sorts of great stuff like that. I mean, they spent money, but they never did the equivalent of what people are arguing right now. That's the fucking point. They never made an equivalent move like signing Manny Machado and Bryce Harper in the same offseason. You'd have to go back to when they signed Sabathia, Burnett, and Teixeira going into 2009, and they were moving into a new stadium, and they had a bunch of money come off. They had Giambi's huge contract come off the books going into that offseason. So, there's always mitigating circumstances, and Bobby Abreu as well. They declined his option. That would have paid him about $17 million. So the Yankees don't just go out and, nothing happens in a vacuum, okay? You have to contextualize what you're saying. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there saying, what about when they got A-Rod? What about when they got A-Rod? That was you could call that an excessive move, right? But it wasn't. You have to go back, man. If you're a millennial, I guess I'm a millennial. I was born in 1987. I feel a lot of these young bucks writing and stuff like that. Go back and fucking read the contextual situation that was going on. Because that's not equivalent to signing Machado and Harper this offseason, getting A-Rod and his $25 million deal. Because they didn't get A-Rod and that huge 10-year, $250 million contract. Texas paid down. It wasn't half of the contract, but it was a decent amount of it. Aaron Boone blew out his knee. His contract came off the books between trading Soriano, who I believe had entered his arbitration years, I believe. It was still the beginning of his career. So he'd been a full-time player for 3 years. So he definitely was into arbitration. So between trading Soriano and Boone getting hurt, and Texas paying some of that contract, the Yankees were paying A-Rod like $14 million, man. That's what you gotta understand. They didn't take on the whole contract, and that was why a lot of people thought they were going to let him walk when he opted out, because him opting out after 2007 meant Texas wasn't going to be chipping in any money into the contract anymore. So context. To insinuate the Yankees aren't trying to win because they aren't throwing money at everybody, and damn intelligence, damn logic, and thinking rationally, and wanting to be flexible. And then the argument, that's what really gets me, man. That's what really gets me. With all the fucked up things in the world right now, this is what really gets me now. And speaking in terms of being a baseball fan, okay, but that drives me insane. To argue someone like me preaching flexibility and cost control and things like that are spreading propaganda so the team doesn't spend money. I mean, do you know anything about fucking baseball, man? I mean, do you know anything about baseball? Or are you just like pretending to know anything about it? Like, that is baseball, man. Go back to what I was saying. Go back to the teams 96, 98, 99. Why were they able to trade for Roger Clemens? Why were they able to sign Mike Mussina? Because they hadn't made idiotic moves before that. Or they hadn't made moves that might have worked out in the short term but hurt them long term. I'll give you a perfect example of that. They could have traded for Sammy Sosa in the 2000 season where they're hovering around 500, like for pretty significant stretches of that year. I don't remember their exact record by month. Everyone knows they had the horrific September going into the playoffs. But that team was not a dominant team that year. Quite honestly, that team, Mariano Rivera is the reason. Mariano Rivera and Roger Clemens are the two reasons why that team won a World Series that year. Because Clemens was dominant in the postseason, and Mariano's Mariano, and you take Mariano in the playoffs, and you had a huge advantage on everybody. But on a 25-man roster, talent for talent basis, you could definitely make an argument that the 2000 Yankees weren't as good as the A's, and on and on. And on. So they go into that all season, and they signed Mike Mussina. They bought in Rondell White, which was a big deal at the time. And oh no, that was I apologize for that. That was actually going into 02. So going into 01, they added Mike Mussina. I don't remember any other moves they made, but they had the flexibility to do that because Sammy Sosa wasn't on the roster. And talking about the Yankees as if, again, they don't have a budget. And you can say whatever you want about that. You can say they shouldn't have a budget. But that's just the way it is, man. While they had a budget, they won 4 World Series titles and were a dominant team for about 17 years. And now they're basically in the same position again while they've been operating within a budget. So, it gets to a point where it's a little logical. And I made this point on Twitter. Think about it a little bit. Like, 2087 win team, I believe, and win the World Series. They have a bunch of people coming back on one-year deals. Brocious O'Neal was on a one-year deal. They're about to jettison Knobloch after experimenting with him in left field. So that team was about to be in transition. And no one was saying at the time, like, how could they not sign Manny Ramirez and Mike Mussina? Because you have a lot of age on the roster, and you can play the games. You could say, like, let's DH O'Neal in 01 and sign, and they're not committed to winning. Even though they've won World Series in 96, 98, 99, and 2000, they're not committed to winning because they're not signing the 2 marquee free agents instead of just one of them. And let me say too, like, I'm going to be annoyed to a degree if they don't sign Machado, because I do feel like he's a perfect fit, and I feel like some of the logjam issues when Didi comes back you can deal with in the flow of the season, whether that means simply putting Stan in left field and maybe sitting down Gardner, depending on the year he's having. Like, we'll see about all that. We'll see about the year Bird has and Voit. We'll see about playing Andahar at first. Who the hell knows? I just think Machado makes a lot of sense. But the idea, it's really multi-pronged, okay? That Hal is being cheap. Hal's not as committed to winning as his father. And that the Yankees used to operate without a budget, and now they do have a budget. I think it's the same budget, man. It's inflated. I think circa 03, the payroll was like $120 million. I'm not sure what it is now. But what's the argument? The Dodgers have had $300 million payrolls, and they haven't won any World Series, even though they really should have won in 2017. Gave up 2 games they could have won. They could have easily won the series in 6. C'est la vie for them. But as if that's the model you should strive for. Yeah. The model I want to strive for is trading for Adrian Gonzalez when he had declined from a superstar to basically an above-average first baseman, and Carl Crawford looking like he's heading off a cliff, and Josh Beckett when he's having a terrible year, and taking on all that money. So we do have a $300 million payroll, and golly, it looks like we're really trying to win, aren't we? Because our payroll is $300 million, except so much of it's tied into dead money and terrible contracts, Andre Ethier, Matt Kemp, and on and on and on. And let's not win a World Series, and they easily could have won one had they managed all that money a little bit better those years, okay? Had they not made that trade, right? And still signed Greinke and had Greinke and Kershaw in their primes at the top of the rotation. Had they not had Gonzalez and Crawford and all those dudes on the roster, who knows what they could have done, what maneuvers they could have made. It's all relative. Like who the hell knows? But like that's not the model I want the Yankees to strive for. Just do everything, throw money around. Let's sign Corbin. Even though it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that he got 6 fucking years, man. Tommy John surgery and 1 year in the bank as a dominant starting pitcher. I know he had a great second half in 2017, and he's throwing the slider. Once he started throwing the slider 50% of the time, he turned into a different pitcher. But, how's that going to affect his arm? going forward. We don't know.